We'll shake hands and we'll crack beers. And then we'll toast.
And we'll toast.
All right. Doctor?
Doctor.
Doctor?
Doctor.
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 Good day to you, sir.
Good day to you.
Good day to everybody out there in streaming land. Welcome to the CTIG Year in Review, brought to you by Cybrary, brought to you by unnamed beer supplier. Also brought to you by our first science experiment of the day, which is the CTIG Hasty Beer Cooler. We were going to open the session with a foot race to see who could get in here and get the best seat. That would be this seat. But since we didn't foot race, I just went ahead and claimed the best seat because I made the Cybrary Hasty Beer Cooler, which, if you're ever in a pinch, consists of one cardboard box for rigidity. And then 2 garbage bags. Why 2?
Dose.
Well, there's the science. You see, you have your inner liner, your outer liner. And you're wondering, why would I line that with 2 garbage bags when only one is necessary to prevent leakage? The answer is condensation.
Condensation.
And if condensation is going to compromise my rigidity, my vessel, then, I would have failed by the course of this hour. I'd have a soggy cardboard box. So we at CTIG, being devotees of science, decided that we were going to do a better job in almost everything. So
little do you know,
the Hasty Beer Cooler.
The Hasty Beer Cooler will be appearing on our merchandise site sometime in the near future. We don't have an exact estimate for when the CTIG merchandise site will appear.
Not yet, no.
But in the near future, you'll be able to get your very own Hasty Beer Cooler.
What we could do is we could just we could put the instructions on the website, but it could be a game we could make everybody play. It could be like an NPM Python module trap. We could actually bait that and see who catches it first and who catches it wrong.
Well, I mean, we could do that.
We wouldn't do that.
We could also hold a contest to see who has the best response from Chat GPT.
Oh, we could.
On how to build a shoddy beer container.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that actually is a really good idea. We could see if Chat GPT could build a Hasty Beer Cooler.
What the instructions would be.
I defy Chat GPT to build as good of a beer cooler.
Did you hear that, everybody? Ryan English is defying Chat GPT
to build a better beer cooler than I can.
Build a better
Hasty beer cooler than I can.
All right. If you'd like to participate in this contest,
right?
Ryan's home address is
Doxing 101.
Right. So we'll come back to this later. So the point of this podcast, if you were thinking it's pointless,
right?
Is this is all hands week for
Cybrary.
What were some of your favorite all hands activities, Ryan?
My favorite all hand activity so far has been the miniature golf that we did last night, where I personally witnessed. Well, I got to say, I an incredibly fast learner, but Bia watched me and Rob fail and then promptly shot 3 holes in 1 on each of those
So you lost?
Yeah, got smoked. It was an impressive display of marksmanship, and I'd like to congratulate Bia on that. Really, really well done.
My favorite event for All Hands Week would have to be the beer we're drinking.
Oh, that is one of the highlights, actually, too.
And if you're wondering why we're in lab coats, it's because we are the Cybrary Threat Intelligence Group, or CTIG, and we do science. And we don't just do easy science. We do dirty science.
Dirty science.
Hard science.
Hard science.
Right? So that's why we got to gear up like this every day. You don't want too many bits on your clothes when you go home.
Right. The only thing that we are missing is pocket protectors.
We don't have pocket.
God, you didn't get us pocket.
Yeah, we failed at pocket protectors. So what we're really here for,
right, is the year in review.
Year in review. Now, normally around now, you would have people doing 2023 predictions, but don't let them fool you. For the last several years, some of the biggest events of the year happened in December, which meant when you go into a 2023 prediction like
You're
mode,
already wrong.
you're already wrong.
Wrong. So what we thought we'd do is recap some of the most interesting and or biggest stories in 2022, because as you'll see here shortly, history has a way of repeating itself. So why spend a lot of time fussing over what could happen when it's probably already happened in a different form or gets rewritten into a 3.0 for 2023, and it's basically the same thing, just more effective.
Ryan is also auditioning for Marvel to be a writer for the multiverse. So that's why he's using a lot of time multiversal lingo.
Well, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know the game was up. All righty. So let's get into the meat of all this before my future aspirations for Marvel are collapsed by your early reveal.
All right, Ryan.
Thanks, pal.
Like starting the year off.
Starting the year
right?
off.
It's what? Today is what? December 8th?
December 8th.
All right. So starting the year off December 1st, 2022 till now, what was your...
What do you mean? December 21st, 2022?
No, I mean January 1st.
Oh, okay.
To
what's the biggest story for me?
Like for you. Like doesn't matter if it's on our list, it doesn't matter. You know what was the big Ryan English story this year?
You mean the biggest thing for me?
Right.
Or the biggest thing?
No, well, like the biggest thing in security
was that I got hired at Cybrary.
That you got hired.
Easily the biggest thing.
All the things that are happening in the world. New ODay coming out all the time.
I think that made the biggest splash.
It made the biggest
I got
splash.
hired at Cybrary. But other than that, honestly, though, for me, it was the fact that after, let's see, almost 7 years of occupation, Russia just woke up one morning and decided they were going to YOLO this thing and invade Ukraine.
So you've been in the military.
The nightmare that everybody thought could happen finally happened, and they did it. And it's been the most grotesque and amazing thing that you could possibly ask for or even not want to ever see again in your life. It's been happening since February 24th.
So you've been in the military before?
That's correct.
Would you ever YOLO a mission like this?
No.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. No, I would never. I would the level of YOLO that they performed, they displayed, is going to be talked about for centuries. It's just boggles the mind.
It boggles the mind.
No battlefield prep, no real plan, and unlike what Russia's done in the past, they didn't set the stage with a series of events in cyberspace. They didn't pre-stage their kinetic attack. They didn't do any intel prep of the battlefield. But as we've seen Russia do since, the blackout, or not the blackout, the power outage that they caused in 2015 in the winter, where they shut down the power supply in Kiev, the way that you'd stage an invasion of this kind, you would think that you'd create all the havoc you possibly could in the moments leading up to it.
Right.
You start with any number of things that you've already accomplished, even if they don't. Men? Like Little Green Men was played out, so they decided just to send in
the Blue Men
aircraft full of Blue Men Group. But
there wasn't a lot of aircraft though in use. I mean, we saw some early dogfighting.
There weren't a lot of aircraft. What about getting a transport plane full of paratroopers shot out of the sky? Like, that's not a mistake that you make. So when you see Russia, who we've all been living in fear of for as long as your digital memory takes you.
Did you have to hide under their desk for nuclear drills?
When I was a kid,
yeah,
I remember.
Do you want to do one now?
Not at all.
Come on, we should do one to show readers what it used to be. I mean, our listeners.
We're going to scramble under a desk and spill our beer. I could time you as you do it.
No, I'll time you.
No. I'm going to time you. It's your idea.
Never mind.
All right.
We're
moving on. So I thought the biggest story of 2022 was a major power invading their smaller next door neighbor. And at first, it was the lack of activity in cyberspace that made everybody curious.
At first, I was afraid.
Then I was petrified.
I was petrified.
And then after that, we saw that there wasn't anything to be afraid of. In fact, it was the opposite for a little while. Then what happened?
No, wait. Just because they didn't pull the cyber forces out early on doesn't mean there's nothing to be afraid of.
Expand on that, please, if you would.
So many people don't know this. I am also new to Cybrary.
The second biggest thing of the year was, after me getting hired to Cybrary, was that Dave had already been hired to Cybrary. But you've been to Ukraine.
I have been to Ukraine.
You've worked a lot. Very closely with Ukrainians who are involved in the defense of their nation on the digital battlefield.
I work with both government officials and private sector officials.
That's right.
Starting right after the 2015 blackout.
That's correct.
And from between then and 2019, I spent about 8 months total there.
I remember.
Man, it's actually hard to talk about sometimes. But I met a lot of really great people.
Yep.
I helped cut off a bunch of different attacks.
Right.
But the entire time I was there were two things that really interested me. One is how Russia focused they were.
Okay.
Right. So I got a call from somebody, and they're like, "Hey, these Chinese actors are breaking into Antonov. Antonov's like the largest aircraft manufacturer in Ukraine."
Right.
And by the way, don't say the Ukraine.
Correct.
Right. Just say Ukraine. So I call my contact at the cyber police and tell them that there's an APT that's breaking into Antonov. He should beat feet over there and do something about it.
Okay.
And he goes, "Why would the Russians be attacking Antonov?"
And you said, no.
I said, "No, it's not the Russians. It's the Chinese." He goes, "Oh, okay." So he goes, he works there for a good week and a half, comes back, and he goes, "David, I have a very serious question for you." And I said, "Sure, yeah, whatever." And he goes, "Why were the Russians using the Chinese as a false flag for this action?" And I was like, I gotta go. Because everything to them was about...
It had to be Russia.
It had to be Russia.
Right.
And it turned out it was Russia. I mean, not the Antonov example, but it was the Russia they were dealing with. Now, in the United States, you walk around, you see a lot of people who are like, "I spent $900,000 on college and I can only do puppet art stuff." Right?
Right.
And they're very sad about it.
It's very common that it happens all over the place.
$900,000
for puppetry arts.
Right.
It's a damn shame.
In Ukraine, youth are... it's not that they're depressed, and I would ask this about this all the time, like, "Hey, Russia can turn off your power. Russia can do this. Russia can do this. How do you feel about it?" And they'd be like, "It's just Russia." And that would really freak me out, that the cyber attacks would kind of
be so commonplace,
like
so much part of your life.
Right. It eats its way into your personality that you're like, I mean, like, if we were in the studio right now and like the power on the East Coast went out, like, I'd have to hold you because you'd be crying. You'd be like, "No, David, I'm sorry."
Well, yeah, I would absolutely be crying. Dave, you would hold me in that case. Yeah, absolutely. If you were thinking back to, well, first off, let me say this: when we were at DEF CON in like 2016, and we met some of the Ukrainians that you had been working with, they had come to DEF CON to listen to some talks and to
they all want to know what part
network.
of the CIA you work for.
Correct. And the thing that I noticed while we were spending...
The best line was, "Men with arms like that don't work with computers."
They just carry them around and they help set up your rack space.
I was like, "I have arms like that." They're like, "No, you have no arms like that."
But the thing that I noticed about those guys is other than that topic, they didn't seem interested in talking about any single thing other than Russia or watching the Meg.
The Meg. But even
They
in
weren't
the
interested
Meg,
in
even in the Meg, at the end of
anything
the
but
Meg,
right.
they
still
found the one Russian on the beach
and they correlated the attack of the Meg
to Russia.
to Russia.
Right.
One of the questions from our viewers are what were some companies that were targeted first? I'm assuming in Ukraine.
It was a national railway,
Mhm.
one of their power companies,
Mhm.
and one of their television broadcast studios.
And that was 2014-15, or that was
15.
Okay, that was 2015.
So the idea was
Logistics.
you cut off the power,
Right.
people get cold.
That's right.
You can't bring in oil because train's down.
That's right.
You can't tell anyone about it because the TV's not working.
And the population isn't receiving information because there's no broadcasting coming from the central government.
One of the few things.
It's actually pretty standard and actually textbook. It's the way you do things.
That's how you YOLO.
That's how I.
So this wasn't a YOLO, is what you're saying.
That's not even that's way beyond YOLO. That's more of a yeet. You just they yeeted all of the essential. They decapitated essentially. There's no comms, there's no heat, and there's no resupply.
Right. So they also flooded all the emergency service numbers with like blank voice calls, so people couldn't get like emergency calls through to say, "Hey,
grandma's freezing.
Right.
I need more borscht."
Right. So you may be wondering, hey, if this is a 2022 wrap up, why are we talking about 2015, 16, 17?
Because here we are in 2022, and instead of doing the exact same thing, or at least giving it a shot, at least trying, even in the hours prior to a kinetic invasion, they just went for it, and it turned out poorly. Now, since then, everybody with any free time and enough skill has been focused on this phenomenon, has been focused on what's going on in Russia. You're talking both sides have been using the very best offensive hacking tools and skills that they possess against each other, but third parties have come out of the woodwork everywhere and focused their attentions on all Russian infrastructure that they can attack,
or Russian third parties.
Or Russian third parties are coming out of the woodwork to attack Ukrainian and other Western countries. I mean,
right.
You're seeing it. They're hitting Ukrainian allies. They're hitting Poland. They're hitting,
Now there's a weird. It's not weird, but it's a common belief by people like me that a lot of these third parties they're just providing cover.
Right.
Right. You remember the scene in Atomic Blonde where they're walking down the street and they all pull out the umbrellas and the snipers couldn't see them?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So what the third parties are doing is literally umbrellaing it.
Under my umbrella, Ella, under my. I should be more serious about this. Okay. But you're right. But everybody kind of considers third parties in Russia to be state sponsored anyway. And if it's a state sponsored group,
right,
it's the state.
But it's not just Russia.
But it's not just Russia.
We've got like Russian patriotic orgs here in the U.S. or all over the place. It's not just in Russia, and we got Ukrainian patriotic groups everywhere.
And like I think a lot of people have been radicalized to become Ukrainian patriotic groups.
Whoa,
I mean, radicalized in a bad way. I mean, moved to action, because there's right and there's wrong in this one. But the one thing that really kind of got us thinking about Russia as a big story is this: if you look into your history and want to study warfare or anything like this in history, like Call of Duty, it's a really good history lesson. But what you'll find is history is a laboratory. All right?
History is a laboratory.
And a lot of
like
really
a proving
ground.
Hey, speaking of that, the CTIG proving ground
is being created as we speak in the room next door.
Right. And we don't have a date for it yet, but much like the CTIG merchandise page, we'll keep you updated on when the CTIG proving ground is coming.
Except the CTIG proving ground is actually going to happen. The merchandise page probably won't. But long story short, the problem that people should be anticipating here with this conflict is whenever it boils down and slows down and eventually ends.
Doesn't it slow down? I mean, it's completely a different tempo than it was 6 months ago.
It is, but now we're getting into that grinding World War I tempo. But digitally speaking, it's still all hands on deck and everything's flying. What that means is techniques and tactics and tools are being created. A lot of money is being spent to make things new and more effective. And at some point, when they're done pointing that stuff at each other, they're going to have all these really good things to point at everybody else. That means if we were going to...
Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah. I mean, because there are third parties involved in defending Ukraine, which means attacking Russia, which means attacking networks, which means when they're done being third parties in a patriotic and very existential sense, they might just go looking for some money later on. And it's not like bad guys don't live in Ukraine and conduct ransomware. We don't. Right. It's not like that's never been done.
Exactly.
So if we were going to do anything foolish enough, like predict something in 2023 or beyond, then one of the things we would predict is...
Oh, we just had a fan walk by.
That was awesome.
Who waved to us. That was crazy.
It's killer. I love it.
I'm on the
yeah, no, me too.
So
what we're trying to say is that while Russia is the biggest story of 2022, it's gonna metastasize into the biggest story of the next couple of years. Right?
So here's a funny story. I was working in a different company when the invasion happened. And for 3 months before the invasion, I kept going, this invasion is going to happen and it's going to be a big deal and blah, blah, blah. And like the CISO and leadership were like, we don't have anything in Ukraine. Why would we even care? But as we've seen now, war, like Russia invading Ukraine, has basically affected the entire continent.
That's right.
Right. So if you have data centers in Poland or Germany, right, like it's being affected by this war.
That's correct. And that means that there's the possibility that somebody's gaining a foothold in those data centers today that can exploit that foothold at a later date when they have time, which means in the future, when you're not thinking about it, that's when it happens. So
one of my favorite things about visiting Ukraine was the Samsung building.
Mm-hmm. Why?
In the middle of Kiev,
yep.
Kyiv, I'm Southern.
Yeah.
Was a giant Samsung building.
Yep.
And they did a lot of R&D there.
Okay.
Especially for mobile devices and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the state of it is, but during the siege of Kiev,
mm-hmm.
it would have been very easy to steal a lot of proprietary material like signing keys, things like that, from that building, thus making the Samsung Eagle
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yes, making the Samsung ecosystem vulnerable.
Right.
The beer's working. Anyway,
the beer is working.
All right, so but enough about that.
But we're a party.
We have a lot of things to talk about.
We do have a lot of things to talk about, like a party.
So let's talk about.
We're going to go ahead and also we're taking applications for people to join us next year at this party. You have to send a picture of yourself dressed as a squirrel in a lab coat.
Or 3 squirrels in 1 lab coat.
Yes.
Okay. Here's a hot new one that just came in. Okay, what, if any, is the danger of Viktor Bout being returned to Russia, in our opinion? So if you, the listener, aren't aware of who he is the merchant of death. He was a former arms smuggler that had supplied weapons and ammunition to conflicts all around the world in the 80s or 90s and early 2000s. There was a movie done about him, right? Nicolas Cage played him in
Lord
of War, right? So eventually he was caught and arrested, I believe, in Thailand, and we're talking 10 years ago, something like that. I can't quite remember.
Post-movie.
What's that?
Post-movie.
Yeah, way post-movie. And he's been imprisoned in the United States since then. And as of today, he was involved in a trade for Brittany Griner, who was a basketball player in the WNBA.
Now, how many weapons has she sold?
She sold exactly 0 weapons, and her great sin was that she came to play at her club team, which was in Russia. During the off season, the WNBA off season, she supplements her income by playing in Russia. And she happened to bring like 2 vape cartridges because
Vape.
vapor
Is that like code for
no,
marijuana?
yeah, well, it could be nicotine too, like the little vapor kids that. Anyway,
Vapor kids.
Kids who vape. My mom vapes. It's just ridiculous. But
Your mom's a vapor kid?
yeah, she's reclaiming her youth through vape. Anyway,
So if she's never traded any
nope,
weapons,
no
but
weapons.
he has.
But he has.
What
He
are we
has
really
supplied
getting
the
on the deal
means
here?
for hundreds of thousands of people to become extinct. So now, yeah, we're trading because there are priorities that don't necessarily involve guns and ammo. But the question was what we think the danger of Viktor Bout being returned to Russia is. 0. Okay, that guy is a spent force. He's not going to be, he's been giving intel to the US for 10 years. He's not going to be going back into the Lord of War game. If anything, he's just a pawn. He's going to go home. He's going to get a nice little apartment to live out the rest of his life in.
All
So,
right.
no danger.
So
all right, outside of Russia, let's keep moving.
On my laptop screen right here, we
Yes.
have a list of
many things to talk about.
Things that we came up with.
Let's talk about supply chain attacks.
Well, wait a minute. We came up with this whole list of things.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Ryan to randomly pick one that's not supply chain attacks now.
All right, I got you covered. I got one randomly pickable.
All right.
Emotet.
Emotet.
How about that? Bam.
All right, what do you want to talk about Emotet?
I want to talk about why is Emotet still a thing? It's been a thing since 2014. You would think that Emotet would have been solved, puzzle solved, put it on the shelf as in the history books, just, hey, here's a book about Emotet. We fixed that problem. It's like polio. We're done. No, we're not. No, Emotet's back, and it's back better than ever.
Is it better than ever?
Yeah, it's better-ish than ever, but it's back, and that's the point. And you're sitting here thinking to yourself, this Emotet is still working. It still works. They tweaked it a little bit, but we still have Emotet. And it's crazy because I remember when Emotet was first had its debut. It was I remember Emotet's debutante ball.
It was presented to society.
It was presented to society, and great dress, elegant, well put together. Looked good, danced really well, and then Emotet kind of aged out. So we thought, but now Emotet's back.
So what do you think about that?
What I think about that is you just like for the same reason that we didn't do a lot of predicting of what's going to happen in 2023. It's like, look, why spend a lot of time thinking about what's going to happen when you've got an Emotet still lurking and still being weaponized and still being used? It's, I think who brought it back? TrickBot. Somebody's using Emotet to make money today in 2022. And
the fact that it's still making money,
and they're still making money.
We just had another fan walk by.
All right.
Who's
drinking beer?
Crazy. It's like Good Morning America down here or something.
All right, now you pick another one.
All right. Well, okay. So you picked one. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick ChatGPT.
Oh man, you picked the one thing that I cannot expand on because it's like 10 minutes old. ChatGPT splashed last week.
It did, but it was a big splash.
It was a huge splash. So why is ChatGPT such a big deal?
So everybody's used chatbots before, right?
Right.
Hey, I'm trying to change my flight at Delta.
Right.
To our chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
This is a chatbot.
I hate it, by the way.
That you can give instructions to,
mm-hmm.
And it can actually do things like I wrote a very detailed set of instructions for it to generate a Python-based C2 controller.
Right.
And it did. And then after it did that, I literally just typed the sentence, now add TLS support to the connections. And it went back and rewrote the Python C2 network, C2 tool, and encrypted all of the connections. Like,
how long did that take you to do?
30 seconds.
And now how long
so it would take me maybe a couple of hours to write that.
Okay. Well, all right. So you would write it and you would debug it. All told,
much debugging.
How much time would you spend writing and debugging a Python-based C2 network and then adding TLS for transferring out data?
I just to be on the safe side, I'd say a day if it didn't have a lot of options.
Okay, a full day, and you've been writing code for 20 years or more, right?
Yep.
And so let's just say a script kid would take a week to write, debug, test, and maybe try to deploy something like this. And now it took you how long to explain to me just what you did?
It
20,
took me
20
longer
seconds?
to explain to you than it did for Chat GPT to generate it.
Now, would you have to go back in and debug everything that Chat GPT made?
You ideally should,
Right.
but it's written in it was written really well. It ran on the first try.
So what you're telling me is instead of spending a lot of time learning Python and keeping up my skill set in Python, I should just tell Chat GPT what to do.
Yeah, that's
But then how would you test it? How would you know? Unless you knew enough about code to know where something was inefficient or
that's
bad.
where somebody like me, I've written enough code, I could look at it and go, oh, that actually would work.
Okay. So there is still
So here we are.
a
I'm
learning
opening
gap,
up.
right?
All right. So you can't see it on the screen, but I'm showing it to Ryan.
Okay.
This is it,
Yep.
right? I'm going to write.
It's got examples of questions or statements you would give to Chat GPT to get some kind of an output.
Write a network port scanner to grab banners. All right. So write a network port scanner to grab banners.
Okay. And you didn't even tell it to do it in Python, but
No,
it says,
it just
here's a simple Python script to, and it's already picked out. How many ports did it pick out?
it's going to do them all.
Oh, it looked like it listed what it wanted. That was it. How many lines of code is that? 30?
Lines of code, 21.
So I guess pen testers' jobs just got a lot easier. And, that's honestly, we were talking about this earlier today that, hey, pen testing and red teaming is sexy, but I actually think defending is sexier.
Defending is sexy.
Defending is sexier.
Right. Especially when
Right.
you have to deal with AIs now.
Right. Now, how sexy is it if a guy can just go in there and be like, oh, write all this stuff and do my thing for me? And then the defender still has to carry the burden of getting the job done. And frankly, it takes a thief to catch a thief. So if you're a defender who's successful, then, maybe we should shine a bigger light on that.
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
All right. So
All right.
I went.
You picked the next subject.
No, I did Chat GPT. You're up.
Well, you have to pick the subject. You remember yeah. You picked Chat GPT. Right. I'm losing track. Let's talk about proxy logon. Oh no, what was it that you were talking about last week? Was the FreeBSD ping.
FreeBSD ping,
which I think is a dirty, just an absolute
dirty dog.
Dirty dog. This thing is just a great trick, right?
So just out of curiosity,
yeah.
Write me an exploit for FreeBSD ping vulnerability.
What this is a stack-based buffer overflow based off a response you get from pinging a network. And it's almost like if you put your hand out to shake somebody's hand and they stick their hand out to shake your hand back, but you pull your hand away at the last minute and you deliver a beautiful punch right in their nose.
Well, that was kind of violent.
Well, that's what this is a foul piece of work, man. It's brilliant. I like it, but it's absolutely it's creative and it's simple and it's like an idea that takes place at like this very basic interaction that happens all the time. Ping, hey, what's up? Nothing. Smash. And what happens if your FreeBSD is successful? And by the way, this is, in case you're keeping score at home, this is CVE 2022-23093. 23093 if you're keeping score at home. So
it was introduced a previous security vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
The FreeBSD team was trying to fix.
Okay.
And by attempting to fix that previous one, they introduced this one. which is a weird theme this year. Fix has gone bad. The milk's gone bad.
The milk's gone bad. So let me get this straight. A bunch of guys in a lab sitting around trying to fix a problem, creating a new problem instead.
They didn't have lab.
They didn't have lab coats.
They didn't have lab coats.
I mean, I think that the problem is actually a lot more obvious. They didn't have lab coats. And here's the deal. If you're in there doing science and you're not wearing a lab coat, I think Gary Larson would probably admonish you. You can't do science without a lab coat. I don't care how science you are. There's no science if there's no lab coat. End of story. You end up creating a FreeBSD ping exploit, and that's just dirty. So who first reported this and discovered it?
It was reported in
like a week, 2 ago, something
Yeah.
like that. And that's why you don't make 2023 predictions, by the way, because like the second you do, somebody in a lab has an outbreak. There's an outbreak, and it's FreeBSD.
So most people would be like, "Oh, do you have FreeBSD? Desktops at home?" No, but a lot of network-based appliances still do run FreeBSD,
Right?
and this will take a while to.
Sure. Yeah, this will percolate.
Yeah, it'll take a while to get updated.
Yeah. Which is okay. So we have a question from the audience. Now that there has been borrowed threat intelligence, how do you gather any information to categorize it into an APT group?
Borrowed threat intelligence. I'm not following.
I get my threat intel from Twitter, by the way.
I get my threat intel from Ryan.
So,
so
let's focus on the second half of the question. How do you gather any information to categorize it into an APT? So how do you attribute? Is that what we're getting at? I'm going to need the listener to clarify that, and as soon as you do that, I'm going to answer that question.
Borrowed threat intelligence.
I mean, I think all threat intelligence is borrowed, more or less. Like if you are doing your job if you didn't pay for all these threat intel services that you can pay for, if you just wanted to kind of be your own threat intel, your own canary in a coal mine, it's just a question of how much reading you're doing and where you're getting your information. Right. And if like I wake up in the morning and I spend the first part of my morning making coffee and reading, even Twitter for InfoSec Twitter, just to look for who's sending information. Like look at what VX Underground says, and maybe they've dropped something. And there's a couple of other people who just very casually are going to be dropping, bad addresses and C2s and things like that.
I check David Maynor and Ryan English and the Cybrary CTIG group.
That's the first place I look. But that's when I actually looked there, and it's what I had yesterday. So my point is that there are places to look where you would get your own intel, and over the course of time, you build that little library and you read and you look for it every day. You're kind of your own threat intel person. Now, is life easier if you have a threat intel feed? Yeah. And if your time compressed enough to where you would be willing to pay for that instead, measure of convenience, right? But we're all borrowing information from somewhere else, unless you're Danny Adamitis and you're out there like literally making threat intel happen every day on your own even when he's bored.
We source original intel.
Yes.
There's a lot of companies that just buy feeds or will just rewrite
other people's stuff. Bigly. That happens bigly.
Yeah, and that's useless. Like I'm not sure.
And they charge for it.
Yeah, they charge a ton for it.
Yeah.
Or you'll have like an internal CTIG group somewhere, and it's like, oh, what's going on? Well, I took Cisco's threat intelligence summary, and I just rewrote it.
And I summarized it.
Right.
But I mean, it doesn't matter if you're fighting a kinetic war or a digital war. If you're responsible for other people, then you're going to repackage all the information you have to them. So everybody's really borrowing threat intel.
Right.
And it's just whether you charge money for it that makes you a crook.
How to gather any information to categorize it into an APT.
Yes.
So the way that we do that is we generally will follow a previously unconnected group of attacks.
Okay.
Right. And the attacks may have similar
TTPs,
right, or similar targeting,
right,
similar verbiage.
Maybe share some C2.
Right. But that's a pretty strong indicator.
Yeah, that's your definite indicator.
Right. So we're talking more like
I'm not just sharing my C2 with everybody.
Well, that's not what I heard.
Oh, shoot.
Uh,
Word's getting out.
but like somebody may be using the same tool or
Okay.
various things, and it's possible for several different orgs to use the same tool. But when you start looking at the tool, the targets, things that they're interested in, like things that they do post compromise and lateral movement, you start to notice similarities, right? And
It's like a telegraph operator. You can tell what their hand is by the way they tap out Morse code. Back in the day, you can tell who the telegraph operator was tapping out the code by their individual technique. It's a well-known thing. Look that one up. And we can do the same thing when we're looking at attack profiles.
so, but right, well, before it becomes an APT, we'll put it to a group, and we'll call it. The groups have different names, but generally something like unknown and like a number, like unknown 4821, right? And we'll keep following it, keep adding to it until it becomes clear that it is being done by a single set of actors against a specific type of target and whatnot. It's not an easy process, and it takes a lot of investigational skills.
And this is why attribution is such a pain. And you'll hear when you read something, when they do attribution, the word is usually we assess with high confidence or we assess with low confidence, but we assess X, Y, or Z as the result of something that we saw. And then it's kind of still up to the reader to make a decision.
How do you assess that this podcast is going?
I assess it's going well, but we have so many things we wanted to talk about that I feel like we're going to cheat people if we don't get to them.
All right. So it's my turn.
Yeah.
One of the groups that I've been just fascinated with this year, Lapsus.
Yeah. It's, and I love how they, obviously you remember when Stained was a band?
No.
Well, they were a band. And I used to only call them Stain''D because I didn't like them. And I thought they just were like a cover band for other people's kind of grunge. But
was this in the 50s?
No, it was like 10 years ago. But Lapsus $, is how I call that.
That's actually how I call it too.
Lapsus $, because that's how they spell it. All right, go on.
So
social engineering group, pretty awesome at what they do.
Pretty awesome what they do.
Right?
No C2.
Nope.
No,
just
no
talk
OJ.
you into it. Talk you right out of your clothes.
Just talk you right out of them.
Talk you right out of your clothes. You got to hand it to these guys. Like they do a lot of research on who they're going to target for social engineering.
Right.
They start chatting people up, make a sympathetic bond with them. Oh man, how was your work? Oh God, tough week. And then play on these human emotions. And the next thing you know, Lapsus is getting you to give up your MFA, like the second factor of your MFA, to them so that they can log in. See, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't pay for cable. My dad does. And every time I want to watch a football game, I call my dad up and I go, hey man, in just a minute, and I'm not going to mention the company, but like the company that you pay cable to is going to send you, because I made my dad set up 2FA, right? They're going to send you a code. They're going to text you a code to your phone. I'm going to need that to log in to get my Apple TV to play Fox so I could watch the Georgia Bulldogs whip Georgia Tech as usual. So anyway, every Saturday, my dad's waiting by the phone for me to.
Admitting on a podcast that you're stealing content?
No, it's not stealing content. The content was paid for by somebody. I'm borrowing the content.
How do you make an APT?
What's the difference between if I borrowed the content or just made my dad put the phone up to the television so I could listen to it?
I'm not a content owner.
Okay, well, that's what I do. So the point is, I just talked my dad into it because he's my dad. He loves me. But
does he?
Lapsus doesn't love you.
Lapsus does not love you.
Lapsus doesn't love you. They love your credentials, and they somehow successfully.
Big companies,
people like NVIDIA, they talk people into giving up their MFA, or even worse, and this is the best part, they make these friendships. People they've never seen in the flesh will begin to trust one of their guys, and they'll talk them into installing a remote desktop operator on their work desk. Hey man, do me a favor. Just, hey, I'm your boy, right? I'm your boy.
I'm your boy.
I would never lie to you.
I'd never.
I would never lie. And I care about you, man. You remember that time you told me that, your girlfriend slipped and fell and I told you about how to get her to the hospital? Just, I'm so there for you. I'm going to need you to set up this remote management tool on your desktop workspace for me. I'm going to send you the link to your phone. Here's a $10 gift certificate to Starbucks. If they were really smart, they'd offer a year subscription to Cybrary. But that's the lure that I would take. If you said, look, man, I'll get you a year subscription to Cybrary, right? If you put this remote desktop machine on, or this remote desktop tool on your workspace at your work.
All right. Well, so we have Lapsus.
Okay, Lapsus.
You're up.
Okay. Let's see. We've got, you know what? Before we go any further, I want to talk. I'm going to do an unboxing, because one of the things we're going to talk about today is a contest that we are going to run. What are the rules?
There are no rules.
There's no rules, but
excuse me. Wait, I'm sorry.
Wait,
I'm getting this in my. There's lots of rules.
There's lots of rules. Okay. What's that? That's a Flipper Zero. I'm going to unbox it right now. Okay. So here's the deal.
Can you hand me another beer from the shoddy beer can first?
No, this is the hasty
beer can.
Gosh, man, get it right. Nomenclature, sir. This is science. We get the nomenclature right. By the way, if you don't have the nomenclature right, you're not doing science. Oh, man. Here you go. I'm even going to wrap it up for you. Wrap it up. We'll take it. Flipper Zero. That's what I'm holding in my hand.
I have mine right here.
Dave has this, but I'm going to do an unboxing because I heard those things are super sexy for people who do this stuff online. They unbox stuff and people pay them to do it. I'm going to do it.
You're supposed to do it with like white gloves or something.
Well, we're not giving it back. We're not returning it. Quick start card.
This is
power cable.
This is my Christmas present.
That's right.
To Ryan.
My Christmas.
He wasn't supposed to open it until Christmas.
Too late.
Flipper
Zero. That's going to be given to one lucky winner.
Well, not that one.
Not this one. No. But the unboxed version will actually be more valuable than the boxed version.
Because you touched it?
But then nobody should trust it because I've already touched it. And who knows if I loaded something on it nefarious. So you'll be receiving an unboxed, right? Unboxed Flipper Zero. I'm super stoked about this because it's one of the most exciting tools to come out in the last 5 years for people who were in our field. I mean, the Flipper Zero, if you don't already know what it is, well, you've crawled out from your rock far enough to be here and watch us. So you probably know what this is. But if you don't know what it is, this thing enables you to capture RF signals in certain spectrums, and you can then repeat those RF signals. Modify them. Repeat them. So if my neighbor needs me to break into his Mercedes, and I've been close enough to it to capture, well, probably not a Mercedes, but his Hyundai, then I'm close enough, especially his Hyundai, by the way, and especially if you're listening to this in England, by the way, where there's a rash of thefts where people are capturing the key fob signals for Hyundais and then going around, we only have 10 minutes left, and then going around stealing those Hyundais, or at least breaking into them and stealing the goods within someone's parked car. Now, are they using Flipper Zeros? No. But is that what you can do with a Flipper Zero? Yes. And would you want to do anything nefarious with it? No. If you're listening to this, you're probably a researcher too, but you want to be able to do research and attack, right? It's part of your job. Flipper Zero makes life easy. It's the Tamagotchi of RF. Go ahead, demonstrate something. Well, nobody's out there doing it. If you're listening, hit your key fob twice. Uh-oh, you're going to do it to yourself. So the point is, you can even use, there's an IR screen on there.
Oh, yeah, no. I use it to turn on and off TVs and bars all the time.
Probably when George is beating Georgia Tech, Dave's going to come in with his flippers. It happens every year if you haven't been watching. Also, this weekend, what's probably going to happen is Navy's going to beat Army. Again. Did you? Navy's going to beat Army again. I said it. Anyway, so while Dave's messing with that, we're going to give away a Flipper Zero. Right now, he's going to clone his door key to enter our building. And while he's doing that, we have one other thing. Oh, all right, go ahead.
Can you see this? All right, so this is what it looks like when you're going to go into NFC mode, and
That's near field communications.
This is my badge. So people are like, you shouldn't do this because people can break in. Well, people can break in anyway. So you switch it to a mode where you can read it.
Oh, somebody just got in.
You can save this, or you can save it, or you can emulate it, or you can fuzz it.
So let's say you're sitting there at a bar and old Dave Maynor comes up next to you to enjoy a drink. You've never met him in your life, have no idea who he is. And you've got your keys because they're bulky and stick in your pocket wrong. And you're just ponied up at the bar having a few beers. And you got your keys sitting on top of the bar service. You look away. Dave already knows he's going after you. So he places his flipper zero over here, but he could turn the silent. He can make it silent. So
like this is the sound you should listen for. Ready?
Oh, that's a bad sound.
That's a bad sound.
That's a bad sound. So when you hear that sound while you're talking with somebody at the bar, first thing that Dave does is he turns off the Georgia versus Georgia Tech game because Georgia's up like 38-0, right? Turns it off. Boop. And you turn to see, like, oh no, what happened? And then boop, Dave's now got your key card and he can go and emulate it, sneaks into your work later on that night, puts malware on your machine, just cuts Lapsus right out of the whole thing, right?
No, it turns out by the time I got there, Lapsus
has already been in there. Lapsus $ has already been in there.
Yeah, they've already been there. There's nothing left.
Nothing left. All right, so we did Flipper Zero. We're going to engineer up a contest for our listeners to win one. And if you go online and try to find one, be my guest, because the demand for these things is so high that they're selling on the secondary market for like $1,000. What do they cost new? Like $250?
$199.
$199. How ubiquitous is the Flipper Zero? Well, let me answer that question for you. I was recently at the Scout Sniper Association meeting with the Army Sniper Association. We did a professional symposium and there were a bunch of active duty snipers there. And as I'm giving a class in cyber warfare, guess what I see on one of the young Rangers' desks?
RoboCop.
Well, not RoboCop. No, RoboCop's not everywhere.
Barbie.
No, it was Sniper Barbie.
Get
it right. But one of the young Rangers is pocketing a Flipper Zero surreptitiously. I didn't see the distinctive design. And I'm saying, wait a minute. The kids are using them. The kids. This 23-year-old Ranger is using a Flipper Zero. Now, if I'm in charge of the 3rd Ranger Battalion and I know that one of my Rangers, especially one of the snipers, is using a Flipper Zero at all, I'm freaking out, because these are nefarious individuals to begin with for all the good reasons. Number one, they're snipers. Number two, they're in the Ranger Regiment, and they have bad judgment because they picked the Army instead of the Marine Corps. So it's like you're that combination and a Flipper Zero. So you can be that person next if you win our contest. I don't know how we're going to give it to you yet. We haven't decided what the rules are. You must stay tuned. Let's talk about one other thing. At least we have some time. We have 5 more minutes. Let's do a speed round.
All right.
Okay. Speed round. Let's
do Hive ransomware.
Hive ransomware.
$100
million since 2021.
How'd you know that?
Because I do my research, Dave. I'm a scientist. It says so on my shirt.
It says CTIG on your shirt.
Yeah, but it says Cybrary on top. It's science. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about my science. $100 million since 2021. That's a pretty good payday, right? It's pretty decent.
Right. What's their
Cybrary doesn't pay me that. Why do they? Here's the thing. Here's my question. Why do they target education organizations and facilities? I don't get it. Why are they going after colleges? Why are they going after schools? It's not like American education's that great.
We have a question. What threat actor group would you like to have drinks with?
That's a really good one.
So that's a really complex question.
Yeah.
Because most of them are in non-extradition treaty countries. And if we show up to have drinks with them there, we probably aren't coming back.
Probably aren't coming home. But I would like to sit, honestly, though, we're going back to Lapsus, $. I would like to sit with those guys and watch them work while I drank. I'm telling you, man, they talk people out of their clothes. Okay, let's talk about one more thing. Let's talk about some supply chain stuff. we want to talk about SolarWinds or Log4j's like still being a problem, SolarWinds still being a problem, or
So
no?
SolarWinds-
Let's talk about. Do we talk about npm and Python modules?
We did
No,
not.
we did not. We touched on it at the beginning.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about npm and Python, or npm. Right? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Why is it a horrible thing? So people are using typo squatting again. Everybody, go figure.
Typo squatting.
Typo squatting.
No.
So the supply chain attacks are many and they're varied. And with SolarWinds, it was horrifying because a lot of government agencies were affected and they were able to attack 2019 and they were able to ride in on what was legitimate traffic. Well, that's the definition of a supply chain attack. When you talk about Log4j, you talk about
December 10th, 2021.
2021. So it persisted into this year, which is why we wanted to talk about it. It's still a problem.
Up until the invasion of Russia, the concern that people had that Log4j was reigniting the kind of fears of SolarWinds,
right,
was a very legit thing.
Log4j was one of those things that everybody thought was going to ignite the atmosphere and we'd all burn up.
It was pretty bad.
It was like the panic was almost as bad as WannaCry.
Well,
almost.
Yeah, almost.
I mean, it was like, what do we do? How do we stop it?
So it was. So the biggest problem with Log4j was it was such a small exploit. You could tweet it. I would have people emailing me live exploits going, "Hey, I found these on a threat intelligence site." I'm like,
"Don't give me that."
Why did you do that? Like 900 legitimate exploits.
Yeah.
To us, right? Like,
that's scary, and that means that it's kryptonite. It's uranium. Like, you're handing it to somebody going, "Look at this neat rock I found."
Right.
But that's uranium. Right. Don't give me that. Put a lead glove on.
And that was a lead up before the Russian invasion of like Log4j and SolarWinds. But the entire year has also been in like npm and Python modules.
Right.
Right. People will find modules that are included in like very popular apps.
Right.
And submit like code change requests to them to add malicious code.
Right.
And the ones they're finding are very small. They're very small parts of very large programs, things that people aren't really looking for. And it's been incredibly successful.
This is building on like DARPA's starting a program to try to comb through Linux. And they announced that, like, since Linux has been so open source for so long, that there is a possibility that people have seeded certain things like these modules with malware.
I know I have.
But that's the thing. And so
when we would do pen tests, we would totally do that.
And everything, every server, everything, is running on Linux. So this is the backbone of the world, more or less, right? And I mean, you could be less hyperbolic than that, but there I am. So, like, now DARPA's like, wait a minute, it's time for us to comb through all of the things. And maybe, you know what? They could probably do it with ChatGPT.
All right. Well, I think that's it.
All right.
Doctor?
Hey, doctor. And ladies and gentlemen watching, you know what? The hasty is in the way. So we're going to stay. Everybody have a great and healthy and successful 2023.
I hope that you have a great, successful...
and a happy holidays.
With the Army winning.
The Army's not going to win. Navy wins this year again. It's a lot of winning they've done. Getting sick of it. Getting sick of the winning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
We appreciate you guys. We're signing off. And now the technicians come and cut us off for good. We're leaving. Bye.